Awesome. So welcome everybody. It's been a while since we've done one of these with all the other content we've been pumping out. We're going to be going over the team reviews that have been submitted over the last few weeks for the jungle submissions. So those of you tuning in via Twitch on our Discord, which if you do exclamation point and Discord in the Twitch chat, you'll be able to get a nice invite link to our Discord. You can submit teams there for review, and whenever we get to them, and we do them live via these streams. With me today, we have Tristan. Say hello.
Hey guys, welcome.
Tristan is our current month draft champion. I'm obligated to say it. Not a fan of it, but hopefully we get some redemption and dethrone him next month.
I mean, I think you lost 2 games straight, so you
I did. I can't talk any smack. I can't talk any smack. We have about 22, 23 teams to review. I did have to set a cutoff right around 3:30 Central Time today. But we're going to try to accelerate it, and if we can get to the teams that have been submitted after, then we will do that. In the past, from what we're doing differently from what we've done in the past, if we've had these streams kind of open to everybody, we have had some issues with that because people had a lot of background noise in their mic. So if you absolutely do want to talk about your team, make sure to mention that either via Discord or even better via Twitch, and we'll try to drag you in if time permitting. So with that being said, I think we can get started. We have a lot of very interesting teams. What is to be expected is 100% of them, every single submission had Vigoroth, which sort of confirms what we've been saying up until now, is how centralizing he is to the meta. I've yet to see a good team without Vigoroth. Is that kind of the case with you, Tristan?
Yeah, I agree. It's just so central. And like we've kind of discussed in some past streams, it's just so versatile. Where like it's a pretty solid lead. It works quite well as a safe switch option. And it beats like almost the entire meta with like a 1-0 shield advantage. So you can also save it in the back, and if you're able to get your opponents to burn their shields and you have 1 shield to spare, then Vigoroth is able to sweep the majority of things they might be saving in the back, even if that Mon is traditionally considered a Vigoroth counter.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, with that being said, all of these teams have Vigoroth once again, so it's sort of implied, and that's why we might not be mentioning it explicitly when we talk about the reviews here.
So most of the teams, like a vast majority, I think all except 3, also featured Noctowl.
Yeah, that's a good.
Which makes a good amount of sense because Noctowl and Vigoroth pair pretty well together. With Alolan Raichu being the only Mon that's able to beat or tie both of them. And other than that, they have basically perfect coverage against all the main meta targets. And then Noctowl has that nice bulk as well. So that's why the vast majority of these teams are featuring both Vigoroth and Noctowl.
And there is actually one more thing before we get started with the specific teams. You might have been able to see on Twitch that I was able to subscribe via Twitch Prime. This is a feature that they've been telling me about. If you have a Amazon Prime account, you can link to your Twitch and have that all set up so that you get your Twitch subscription to us via Amazon Prime. I'm doing a horrible job explaining it, but I'm gonna let Honda come in here and unbutcher it.
Yeah, thanks everyone. We just got another Twitch Prime subscription from a trainer that I know, Cody Miles. I appreciate that, Cody. Yeah, guys, if you have Amazon Prime, especially, I know a lot of the college kids probably don't know this, but you can get Amazon Prime for a discounted, I believe it's $29.99 a year, and they automatically give you a free monthly subscription to Twitch that you can give. It's no additional cost to you. It really helps us feed that back into the community to help develop more tools and things for you, the Battler community. So we appreciate that. If you can link your Twitch and your Amazon together and drop us that sub, that would be great. Another thing I want to mention is we do have our new Whiscash bait emoji. Feel free to spam that in chat. And we are also polling our current Patreon members right now for our next set of 6 emotes. We've got some really fun ideas for those next 6 ones, so keep an eye out for that. If you're not with us on Patreon, come drop us a buck or whatever you can. Link the Patreon in chat, and I'll throw it back to AJ.
Yep.
Yeah,
And
and one thing I want to add on that before we continue is also the more subscribers we get, the more emote slots we end up unlocking, and then there's more fun emotes for you guys to use, for all the subs to use in chat throughout the stream. So that's just another fun element that we get to add to our streams.
And if you link your Discord to Twitch, you'll be able to use those emotes on Discord if you have a Nitro subscription. So.
Yep. And,
anyway,
I don't think you even need a Nitro subscription.
You don't? Oh, okay.
No, I think you just get them within the server. But if you have now use those emotes on other servers or DMs.
Awesome.
But the one thing to note about that is if you do link through Amazon Prime, you do have to remember to basically resubscribe every month. Because it's not like a regular subscription. Once you subscribe, it's like set and it just stays through. But when you do it through that Amazon Prime subscription, you have to remember to resubscribe each month, or you'll lose that subscriber status.
So, want to go ahead and get started? What do you think?
Yeah.
All right. So, teams without Noctowl is the first category. Like Tristan said, we only had 3 teams submitted without Noctowl. The one you're seeing on screen is perhaps the second weirdest team that was submitted to us. It was Vigoroth, Fortress, Breloom, Sceptile, Minun, and Armaldo. I think this is the only team with Armaldo.
Alright, and before we kind of get into the specifics of this team, I just want to mention that running a team without Noctowl is definitely seeming a little more viable. It's been gaining some traction within the last. But in my opinion, for a team without Noctowl to work, you're probably going to be looking at one of 3 options. One of those is going to be Legacy Pidgeot, which basically functions pretty similarly to Noctowl, a little less bulk, but it flips a few matches and loses a few matches. And then the big one that's been gaining traction recently is Fortress. It obviously does. It's not going to win, or it drops those flying matchups that Noctowl would like have a mirror match, for example. But in return, it has slightly better electric matchups, while still giving you most of that same bug and grass coverage. And then the third option is Scyther, I would say, because it has that similar flying type to take out the rest of the bug types, as well as the grasses. So I think if you're looking to run a team without Noctowl, you're going to be looking towards one of those 3.
Yeah. So this team doesn't really follow that those specific guidelines. He does have Breloom in there, acting as his main anti-Vigoroth. option. I guess Subtile sort of functions in that regard too. I think this is a problem for this team because relying too much on Breloom to take out Vigoroth or the Mirror is gonna give you a lot of trouble because Breloom has a hard time switching in. It's so frail and it can't take Body Slams kindly at all.
And it also just melts in the face of any flying moves.
Mm-hmm.
Or like Confusion from, say, Venomoth or Executor.
Yeah, I've definitely been able to switch into a Breloom with a little less than half HP and take it out with just like wing attacks or something that is like double super effective before it's able to switch out, which is a pretty big waste because I'm switch locked, but he loses a Mon with a lot of energy.
Yeah, and I think another thing I'm seeing is, I believe Armaldo loses to Noctowl, right?
Mm-hmm.
So between Armaldo, Subtile, Breloom, and Fortress, this team is kind of weak to Noctowl. Where Vigoroth and Minun are really the only answers you have here.
Yeah. I'm having trouble justifying Minun over some of the electrics. I know it's quite bulky, and it's got Spark and Discharge, if I remember correctly. But it doesn't necessarily function as well as the other electrics within those roles. And it is quite expensive to power up, so unless you already have it all battle ready, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense for me to be investing in Minun. And it doesn't have really good coverage moves for that hits non-electric moves either. So
yeah, I think
we did get another
the other
here.
I think the other electrics that we've highlighted in past streams, also in the infographic and the meta write-up, tend to function better. They have better coverage moves, and often some interesting subtypings that offer them different matchups or resistances. So yeah,
And
I'd be hard-pressed to want to run Minun over, a Alolan Graveler or Alolan Golem, Lantern, Alolan Raichu, even Kanto Raichu, Magneton, Magnezone.
I'd be hard-pressed to run a team without Noctowl that doesn't have an Alolan Rock. I've tried to make it work with Magneton, but you really just need something that will take out that whole category that Noctowl covers so well.
Yeah, all those bugs.
Yeah, it's basically the category that you're seeing on the top within the Jungle Meta simplified graphic. It's the bug flying types, the bugs themselves. Noctowl does a really good job at taking them out both. So if you don't have something solid for those, and there's nothing really more solid than the Alolan Rocks, then you might have trouble in your coverage elsewhere.
Because the only bug that the Alolan Rocks, or the only bug that the Alolan Rocks don't beat is Heracross. And then they have a pretty close matchup that they tend to win against Fortress. So those are kind of the two main things that Noctowl covers that they don't within the bugs. Obviously, Noctowl also beats the grasses, which tend to beat the Alolan Rock boys. But you make a good point, and I would agree that if you're going without Noctowl, it seems like one of the Alolan Rocks is pretty necessary for the team. And then, like I said, I think Fortress makes another good option in the team because Fortress just walls most of those grass options pretty well.
Yeah.
So you can kind of replace Noctowl's coverage between the Fortress and the Alolan Rock.
Alright, I think we would basically recommend this team to probably go back to the drawing board. There's some pretty big flaws in it. Just based on some of those picks, it seems like it might have just been a preliminary team pick. I don't know that I would switch one specifically just to solve all your problems. You're going to have a lot of issues with Vigoroth specifically, though.
Yeah, I think there could be some wholesale changes here. I think looking at bringing in an alternative grass to Sceptile, I prefer Venusaur or even Victreebel, because they have that poison subtyping to resist counter. I think Sceptile is a little bit of a riskier pick in that regard because it's pretty frail and it's taking neutral damage from counter.
Yeah.
And then probably swap out that Minin for one of the Alolan Rock Boys. I don't think Armaldo is that good of a pick, so maybe drop that in favor of a bug that will counter Vigoroth, like a Beedrill or a Vespiquen or a Venomoth.
And then,
Something along those lines.
so is that Breloom? If you don't have a Heracross, there's no point running 2 counter users because there's nothing that Breloom does that Vigoroth already doesn't do. And it's too frail. It goes down in 5 air slashes from the flying types, and I think 9 or maybe 10 wing attacks. And those are the most common flying type quick moves you're going to see, and Breloom's barely going to leave a dent in anything.
Yeah, I agree. I think dropping Breloom for another Vigoroth counter would probably be a good play, but I think of the monster change, I think that would be lower on priority. I think swapping out some of those other picks is more important.
Yep. For what it's worth, Breloom, there was only one other team that had a Breloom in their lineup. And he had some weird stuff in there too. Let's go on to GBO FX Church 8. He's running Vespiquen, Heracross, Masquerain, Fortress with Heavy Slam Rock Tomb, and I'm glad I'm finally not saying Rock Throw anymore. And then Graveler, Alolan Graveler with triple Rock moves.
Right, so there he has that Alolan Rock Boy and Fortress combo that we were saying we feel is kind of important if you're going without Knock. And then he also has Masquerain for some of that flying.
Yeah.
I think if I was going with a bug flyer with a flying fast move, I'd prefer Scyther. I know it's more expensive, but the Vigoroth matchup is slightly better. And it gives you more pure. It gives you the flying fast and charge moves. But
I think I'd still go with Masquerain over Scyther. The cost is huge. The cost difference. You can basically catch a Surskit just battle ready, power it up maybe a couple times, give it a 10k charge move extra for almost doing the same job as Scyther. And so, like, the Sims favor Scyther a little bit more than Masquerain, but Masquerain has that a bit of unpredictability with its potential for boosting. It is a pretty raw deal to get a boosted Masquerain against your Noctowl, thinking you're going to win, and it's just going to chip away at you with those air slashes a lot more than what you would expect. But that being said, Masquerain is not reliable, and I don't think Scyther is either. If there were anything to drop in this team, maybe I think it would be Masquerain in favor for maybe a grass type. But I don't think it's necessary to make that switch. I think this team is potentially viable for a tournament.
Yeah, I think though this team's gonna have a lot of problem with Lantern, especially because Fortress isn't running Earthquake.
Right. Yeah.
And then you've got those double bug flying between the Vespiquen and the Masquerain. Are both going to struggle with Lantern, and then obviously Lantern tends to be Alolan Graveler as well. And Heracross isn't like a sure thing against Lantern, if I remember correctly. And Lantern can beat Vigoroth in the Zero Shield. And even if you have shields up, it'll still chip away with that water gun.
Yeah.
So that would be kind of my biggest concern, and I think, yeah, if you brought in a grass type from Masquerain, it would help shore up that Lantern matchup.
Hey guys, Church is actually in Twitch chat right now, and he asked, would he want to sub out Masquerain for Noctowl? Would that help him?
Probably. Absolutely. I mean, whenever I see a team without Noctowl, I sort of assume you're being hard-headed like me and you don't want to run it. But yeah, generally speaking, I think that Noctowl has more favorable matchups than Masquerain, as much as I'm not a huge fan of saying that.
Yeah, I mean, I agree, but at the same time, I think if you did swap Masquerain out for Noctowl, you might want to make some other changes, because I just feel like there's a lot of overlap between Noctowl and Fortress. And so you might be better off, if you're going to go Noctowl, maybe drop the Fortress in favor of Venus.
Yeah.
And then another
Because again, going for Noctowl isn't helping that electric, especially Lantern matchup.
Worst case, though, if he doesn't want to run Noctowl, he can swap out one of the bug flying types for Lantern itself. It does, with Graveler and Lantern on the team, you're kind of pushing away opposing Noctowls. And worst case, he has a mirror matchup as another option, so his team isn't as weak to Lantern in general.
He said adding grass type makes him weaker to flying types. Is that a correct assessment?
Yes, but you're not particularly weak to flying types with this team comp. Fortress is perhaps weak to flying types, but not the weakest by any stretch of the bug types. Masquerain
he has
goes...
Heracross, though.
He does have Heracross, yeah. Vespiquen is pretty bulky and at least can hold its own with Power Gem at least. And then of course you have Alolan, Graveler, and Vigoroth there. So you still have options against the flying types. Okay.
And he's saying he doesn't want to run Noctowl, so that's why he's asking about it.
Yeah, so if you don't want to run Noctowl, I think swapping Masquerain to Venusaur might be the play. Especially because it's not like Masquerain has that good of a Noctowl matchup anyways. Which is the main flyer that you should be concerned about in this meta. Because both of Masquerain's charge moves are resisted by Noctowl. Whereas like Venusaur, like in a pinch, can land a neutral Sludge Bomb.
Alright, so we have our next team here, Economical. I believe he used the same team.
I think this team's decent, right?
Yeah.
may have gone undefeated in a tournament this last weekend.
That's right. So we streamed a tournament in Philly this past weekend, and Economical went undefeated against some pretty top-tier trainers. I don't know that he played all of them, but
I know he beat Mason, though.
He did meet, Valor Ash, House Stark, Choose the Master were all in that tournament, and he went 5-0 with this team, without Noctowl, and it kind of makes me happy. A bit of confirmation bias, possibly, but he's running Vespiquen, Venomoth, Venusaur, Lantern, and Alolan Graveler. So
one of the things that I wanted you guys to maybe discuss was in our post interview, he said that he didn't even run Vespiquen the whole time. So I guess what kind of strategy does that play when it comes to just kind of the mind games of combating your opponents when you have a mon like Vespiquen on your team, but you don't even use it?
I mean, I don't know if that's necessarily like just intentional mind game. It's just sometimes you just play whatever mons you think are going to do the best against a certain team comp, and maybe you had the Vespiquen to help deal with a different team comp. Like, I can say I went through Twilight Cup, and I had a Venomoth on my team, and I realized afterwards, like unintentionally, I used Venomoth in 0 games, in 5 rounds that I won each round. So sometimes it's like, I mean, sometimes it could be an intentional mind game, but other times it's just a mon that you build into your team because you like how it complements the rest of the team, and then it just ends up not being one of your top 3 choices in any game.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Vespiquen has some bench pressure, I suppose, in that it is a pretty solid counter to Vigoroth as far as counters to Vigoroth go. But so is Venomoth, and so is Venusaur. So I guess to your point, maybe if anything, someone would be like, well, he's pretty well stacked against Vigoroth in this team, and he's not running Noctowl. So perhaps you'd be tempted to run Lantern, given that it has somewhat positive matchups against a lot of his team, with
Right.
Alolan Graveler in there, Venomoth, and Vespiquen. So it's
Yeah.
almost like the flip side of that.
Yeah, and that's another good point, is the fact that he's packing 3 Vigoroth counters plus the mirror just means he's giving himself a lot of flexibility where he can pick and choose what 1 or 2 Vigoroth counters he wants to bring each game. And with that much flexibility, it kind of makes sense he didn't have to rely on Vespiquen at all, because he had the Venusaur and the Venomoth as other options that probably just matched up better with the people he was facing.
Right. And
All
it's
right,
a
so
solid
should
team.
let's move on to the next category then.
Right. So we're gonna, again, for time constraints and so that hopefully we can get more teams in, we're going to be talking about it, the general category that we saw against a lot of team compositions. Noctowl, Anti-Vigoroth, Grass, and Double Electric was a very popular subcategory. We have everybody here was running Noctowl, of course. And for the anti-Vigoroth category, there was, I suppose, a little bit of everything. Beedrill, Heracross, Masquerain, Venomoth, Vespiquen, those are all within there. Masquerain being a little bit softer against it. And then pretty much any grass type that you can think of was in there too.
Yeah, we have Venusaur, Victreebel, Cradily, and Executor as various grass types here.
And Cradily probably functions least as a grass type within this, but it fit okay in this subcategory, so we just kind of jammed it in.
Yeah, and I'll say I think this team is pretty a pretty good example of a lot of the teams that we saw in that Philly tournament we streamed this weekend. It seemed like a lot of people were running Double Electric, and then a grass pick was pretty popular too. And I can't remember who it was, but I remember one of the matches we streamed, one of the players was not running a grass type, and it ended up being kind of detrimental because it made their opponent's electric types that much safer.
So what you'll notice in this category, or what we notice in this subcategory, is that everybody except one person was running an Alolan Rock within this double electric strategy. And I think that's the right play here, because if you're going to run 2 electrics, you might as well run an Alolan Rock. Again, this is coming from someone who's really tried to push Magneton, and it's fallen short in a lot of situations where I think an Alolan Rock would have done the trick. Whether Graveler or Golem is pretty much a toss-up, though.
Well, yeah, because the nice thing with the Alolan Rocks is not much is resisting their rock moves in this meta. I think it's basically just Magneton and Magnezone really that resist rock. So even in their bad matchups against like a grass type or Vigoroth or Heracross or Lantern, they're still hitting neutral damage back with Rock Throw and Rock Blast. And if they're able to get to a Stone Edge and you don't shield that, that can hit pretty hard.
Yeah,
So even in those
exactly.
bad matchups, they can still usually chunk a decent amount of HP. And then they have such good matchups against the flyers and the bugs.
And they're not as like totally glassy as Magneton is, for example.
Yeah,
which
that
just
too.
kind of
They have a little
crumbles.
bulk to them, so they can hang in the fight a little bit against like a Vigoroth or a Heracross.
Yeah. Within these teams, again, we're not going to be like dissecting them like super in depth individually just for time constraints. But there were some things that sort of screamed out to me. I would say one team, trainer Cody Miles, was running Heracross with Earthquake Megahorn. And then as well, he was running Magneton Non-Legacy with a Alolan Graveler. I think this is a mistake. Magneton without the Legacy, especially the Shiny that you're running, sort of doesn't perform as well as you would want it to. And making it Shiny just sort of takes away the bluff that, that you could be running, that it is, oh, hey, it's a Legacy. Well, no, it's not because it's Shiny.
Right.
And then there's too much overlap with Magneton and Graveler, I think.
Yeah, I was gonna add that because they're both weak to counter damage, and they both don't do too hot against Lantern. So I think running that double electric, you'd be better off swapping that out for, in my opinion, preferably a Lantern. But you could also run a Raichu. Or the other one I like is a Alolan Raichu. Other people don't seem as stoked on it because it didn't show up in too many team comps here, but I really like the look of a Lantern or an Alolan Raichu combined with one of the Rock Boys for a double electric duo.
Mm-hmm. And then Heracross, I would strongly recommend Close Combat over Earthquake. There's very few times where you'd be regretting that you had Close Combat. I think within this meta, Megahorn and Close Combat pair a lot better for coverage.
Yeah, because Close Combat gives you a neutral hit against Noctowl. So if you're able to, say, farm up energy in like a Magneton or like a Alolan Rock Boy matchup, for example, after they're switch locked, and then they bring in a Noctowl, if you land a if you use Close Combat, it's either going to chunk a good amount of health from it or it's going to burn a shield. But if you're running the Megahorn Earthquake combo, those are both resisted, and once they know you don't have the Close Combat, they're not going to be shielding your moves either.
Right.
And like the only thing you'd really want Earthquake for is the electrics, but of those electrics, the rock and steel ones are going to get one shot by a Close Combat anyways. And then Alolan Raichu's going to be weak to Megahorn. Kanto Raichu's not that bulky, so you should be able to just take it out with a Megahorn. So Lantern's the only one that you might want an Earthquake for, but even then I think spamming Megahorn should do the trick most often.
And it's probably going to shield it anyway, so it's almost a moot point to some extent. The Lantern has to sort of shield the charge move that's coming in from Heracross because it's hit so damn hard. One thing to note about, I suppose, this category is that, the anti-Vigoroth or Grass, both of them will be weak to Noctowl, so taking it out quickly will be really important, and that's kind of like what the double electric has as a feature for its team comp. The Cradley team from GS Hair, where he's running Noctowl, Vespiquen, Cradley, Raichu, Magnezone. It sort of flips that because Cradley is not like a full-blown counter to the Flyers, but Stone Edge is not taken kindly by any of them.
Yeah.
And it's able to sort of do some of the things that the grass types can do, in that
It
it
beats
can
most of the
still hit grass.
electrics.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it beats most of the electrics because of that resistance.
Mm-hmm.
But the biggest problem I see with that Cradily team is that it's pretty weak to Vigoroth.
It's very weak to Vigoroth.
Because most grasses beat Vigoroth, but Cradily loses because of that rock subtyping. And then they've got the double electric, which tend to lose to Vigoroth, as well as Noctowl that usually loses to Vigoroth.
Yeah.
So that team's relying pretty heavily on the Vespiquen and the Vigoroth mirror.
Which is a very, very sharp contrast to the other team that we were explaining from Economical, in that he has several choices to deal with Vigoroth. Whereas an opponent is pretty going to very reliably expect you to bring Vespiquen to deal with it. So. In any case, any other team comps that really shot at you? Oh, there was one, Graveler with Thunderbolt, again from trainer Cody Miles. What you'll notice is most people are running triple rock moves on Graveler, simply because you just gain more matchups, and Thunderbolt isn't really doing anything that Rock Blast isn't already. So that Stone Edge Rock Blast combination is more lethal in our experience than the Thunderbolt variant. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah, should we move on to the next team? I think we already did this team. Guess Sears team?
Yeah, so just as a we're kind of talking about them as a group, as opposed to like going into the very specifics. Some teams here are running Raichu, which is a slightly more favorable matchup against the rest of the electrics. It's something to consider that if you're running double electrics and you're not running Venusaur, that you might want to choose Raichu in order to have like a solid counter for Lantern. There is one team that opted for... I don't think there was any that opted for no... Yeah, all of them have Venusaur, so they kind of, there's a little bit of overlap. I'm a big fan of Lantern, along with the grass type. They kind of pair well in the sense that you're still covering those electrics with a solid grass type, like Venusaur, and Lantern still does the job against most of the electrics, still does the job against a lot of the flyers, and it's the only bulk electric type, save for Minun, but that is actually meta.
Right. I actually just, while you're here, the team that was just on screen, Trainer Aegon with Noctowl, Heracross, Venusaur, Lantern, and Alolan Graveler. Now, 5 out of those 6 is what I settled on nearly 3 weeks ago on the meta drop, being double counter user in Vigoroth and Heracross, Venusaur, Noctowl, and double electric, with one of them being a Rock Boy. I did a practice tournament this past weekend and ended up getting second place in it, with Raichu as my second electric paired with Golem. But I'm thinking now that Lantern is probably a better choice. It just convinced me otherwise, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I really like either Lantern or Alolan Raichu for the second one in that electric pair, because Lantern has that better bulk, giving it a little bit of a better Vigoroth matchup, and beats most of the other electrics. And then Alolan Raichu has that psychic subtyping, letting it resist counter from Vigoroth and go pretty even. So I think when you're running that double electric, having one mon that does one of the electrics that does a little bit better against Vigoroth is helpful.
I mean, I already
Go ahead, Brandon. Go ahead.
Well, I mean, I was building my team to counter Vigoroth as a whole. So Venusaur beats it, Heracross beats it, Vigoroth can mirror it. Noctowl is a narrow loss. And while Golem still loses, Vigoroth is not coming out of that healthy, taking anywhere between 8 to 12 or even 13 rock throws. So, I mean, that's what I was trying to go for with it, and that's why that second electric pick is just there as insurance, so to speak. But I felt that it was too, well, Kanto Raichu was too glassy compared to, well, say Lantern, or even if I wanted to double up and go with a Graveler and Golem, which is a really dumb play, but that was something I was considering as well.
We do have a rogue poll going on right now. Who is your preferred Rock Boy? So if you have a preference, go ahead and vote in Twitch chat. What is, between you guys, what is your preferred Alolan Rock this time around?
I like Graveler. Just having
You like
a little bit more bulk means it can win or tie a couple matches that Golem doesn't get. And I believe if, depending on like IVs, if you have one that's bulky enough, I think you're able to, tie or beat Lantern, depending on the IVs of the Lantern.
It's definitely not the kind of matchup you want to switch into, but Lantern has to have some, has to be careful switching into it, so, I'd probably switch in a Venusaur against a Graveler instead, knowing that matchup is going to be really close.
Even Venusaur versus Graveler isn't as close as you think it is. I mean,
does it
personally,
hit it hard because it's glassy?
It hits it hard because Rock Throw, Rock Blast, you can actually get off a second Rock Blast before the second Frenzy Plant.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And sure, you're taking Vine Whip straight to the face, and you have to shield the Frenzy Plant for sure, but the fact that you can actually put double shield pressure on Venusaur, which is something that's meant to counter it, that's not something most things in this meta can say. The only other thing I can think of would be Noctowl and Vigoroth, and that's body slam spam shield pressure. And even then, it's still a loss, but it's the only close comparison I have.
So we'll close out the poll here. It looks like Alolan Graveler's the winner. I kind of agree. The main reason for running Alolan Golem is perhaps as a budgetary constraint. If you don't have a Graveler you feel comfortable using at level, then Golem might be a cheaper alternative since it powers up at lower level.
And the one other thing I wanted to add on this kind of general team comp is I think one of the most important things is considering kind of the coverage between your Vigoroth counter and your grass type, and like making sure that they can kind of cover some of each other's weaknesses. Because those are kind of two of the spots that seem to have the most flexibility here.
So just to sort of recap the category we just mentioned, if you go back and listen in, if you're coming back and listening in, we just reviewed Noctowl, Anti-Vigoroth, Grass, Double Electric, and the players that had those team compositions were JRE Seawolf, Trainer Aegon, Trainer Cody Miles, Ultimate Mayhem, Sebastian Ale, GS Hare, and Rumberto 777. All of them viable. There's some interesting plays here. I think perhaps the Cradley team is the one with the biggest glaring weakness to Vigoroth. But I'm a little shocked that there's no Alolan Raichus in this category. I think it pairs well with the Double Electric.
Yeah, and one other thing on that Cradley is that grass plot is supposed to function as like an extra Vigoroth count, because you have the Double Electric and the Noctowl that all tend to lose to Vigoroth. So you're really wanting your grass type to serve as an additional Vigoroth counter. And so dropping a grass that can beat Vigoroth in favor of that Cradley, which loses to Vigoroth, I think is a poor choice with this team comp. I think if you wanted to run Cradley, it'd probably be better suited in a mono electric team, where you can bulk up your team with an additional Vigoroth counter elsewhere. Especially because Cradley has that rock coverage to help against some of those flying types.
Well, I think we can move on to the next category. If you guys have questions, jump in a Twitch chat and ask them. We'll try to cover them as best we can. I think the bottom line here is the double electric really does need to be paired up with grass. And I think we're going to see that here with this next category. Maybe you guys can agree or disagree. But we have Noctowl, Anti-Vigoroth, Anti-Grass, double electric. And only 3 teams submitted this under this category. We had Tambillo, El Happy 88, and Mystic Styles 1. It's a little bit all over the place of what they chose to bring for the Anti-Vigoroth, and some of those anti-grass overlap with Anti-Vigoroth. Any teams here that are really shouting at you as, like, you know, really viable or some glaring weaknesses?
I'm just trying to look through it real quick.
There were some comments. Tambillo, for example, said he was considering either Fortress or Bullet Punch Scissor over Magnezone. I think by now we've sort of axed Bullet Punch Scissor. It doesn't have the best matchups here. And I don't know that I would be swapping a Fortress for a Magnezone necessarily.
Yeah, I don't know. There's not that much overlap there. Like, yeah, they're both Steel type, but beyond that, they have fairly different matchups.
Mm-hmm. But what you're going to see in this lineup is that a lot of them are going to be really weak to Lantern because of the lack of grass type. With the exception of, I suppose, Fortress.
I think Tambillo's team is decent because
yeah,
Heracross goes fairly even with Lantern, I think. And then he has Beedrill, which tends to beat Lantern.
Right.
And then also
as long
he's
as running X-Scissor.
Right, and then he's running Raichu, which I believe also tends to beat Lantern.
I think it only beats Lantern with the Shield Bait, though. Like the Thunder Punch variant, though.
Okay, well...
Yeah.
Even so, even if it loses, it's like a pretty close loss. So I think that team is, for a non-grass team, stacks up pretty well against the Lantern.
I'm just thinking, though, how would any of those teams handle a flying type, whether it's Noctowl or even Vespiquen or something else, paired with Lantern? Like, paired with Lantern and then maybe even a grass type or a Vigoroth, how would they counter that?
I mean, Vigoroth does fairly well against a Noctowl Lantern core. So you'd be bringing Vigoroth, and then you'd be bringing one of your electrics. And it looks like all 3 of these teams have Raichu, whether it's Kanto or Alolan. And both Kanto and Alolan Raichu have decent Lantern matchups where I believe they can win if they shield bait correctly. And so, you know, a Vigoroth paired with either a Kanto or a Alolan Raichu matches up pretty well with a Lantern Noctowl duo, in my opinion. And then they'd just be bringing one other Mon to deal with the grass. And looking at these teams, it would probably be like the Noctowl or their anti-grass option of like Beedrill, Fortress, Vespiquen. Especially that Beedrill would match up pretty well against the team you mentioned too, since Beedrill tends to be able to beat Vigoroth and Lantern. So I think they have some options there.
I actually wanted to bring up a poll since this there's a couple different move sets within the Noctowl in these teams. Some people are running Nightshade, some people didn't even mention their moveset, and some people are running Psychic. So why don't we go ahead and start a poll up, see what you guys think, whether you would prefer Psychic or Nightshade to pair with Sky Attack on Noctowl.
I believe the correct answer is Nightshade and Sky Attack, though.
Nightshade and Sky Attack.
You're gonna pair Sky Attack with Sky Attack.
Sorry, no, Nightshade and Psychic. That's the correct
Nightshade.
answer.
Yeah. That
Why?
sucks.
Why do you need flying coverage when you have wing attack, right?
Why? Man.
Well, that was the winner of the poll we did it last time, I believe, right?
No, it wasn't.
No, it definitely wasn't. You have little faith in our Twitch chat.
So I'm gonna say that I've been pretty firmly on Team Nightshade, but I might be jumping ship.
Same.
Just because of how popular the Alolan Rock Boys and Lantern seem to be, and how underused Magneton and Alolan Raichu seem to be. Because the main appeal of Nightshade is for those Alolan Raichu, Magneton, and Magnezone matchups. But proportionally, those three electrics are seeing way less play than Lantern and the Alolan Rock Boys can. If you looked at that Philly tournament we covered, there was a bunch of teams running double electric, and most of those double electrics were Lantern with an Alolan Rock Boy.
And Psychic can definitely turn the tables there if they don't shield. It can absolutely help against those Alolan rocks and at least take a good chunk before you go down. So I'm on Team Psychic, but that's only because I saw that tournament live and I was like, okay, now I understand. I mean, I sort of understood the value of it, but I guess I wasn't really putting it all together as like how actually popular those Alolan rocks are going to be.
Yeah, I think it was just kind of our initial valuing of Magneton and Alolan Raichu, and thinking that they would see a lot more play. Because I thought those were two really appealing electrics when I first saw this meta. But just like I said, looking at the overall usage statistics, it seems like Psychic is just the better statistical play.
For now. Unless our boy Alolan Raichu, not that Kanto scrub variant, but the Alolan becomes really popular, then maybe Nightshade sees some more play.
Right.
The poll is agreeing with us. Looks like Psychic is in the majority here. 73% of you prefer Psychic over Nightshade. So with that being said, there were a couple other comments that people did in submitting their teams. LHappy88 saying he was considering dropping Fortress or Golem for Venusaur or Victory Bell. I'm not totally following that logic, other than the fact that maybe, a grass type is just filling a hole that your team isn't, and in that case, if you're running your double electric team comp, then maybe not totally alter that and swap Fortress for Venusaur.
Yeah, I was gonna say that would be my pick. Like I said before, I'm not necessarily a huge fan of Noctowl and Fortress in the same team. I feel a decent amount of overlap between them. So I would say probably drop, if you're set on the Noctowl and the double electric, then drop the Fortress for a Venusaur or even a Victory Bell if that's what you prefer.
Yep.
I mean, personally, I'm not even set on Fortress in this meta at all. But
it was putting in some work this weekend, though.
It does put in some work, but nearly every single team's going to have a Noctowl. Every team's going to have a Vigoroth. So those are two things that, while they do counter Fortress, and Fortress can do some damage with Bug Bite or a Charge move, I just don't see, outside of those two, it getting into a team of 3 too much when those are the two biggest threats in us to worry about. I mean, I do understand the appeal of it, as it goes through the grass types and can outlast most of the bug types, but I mean, it did do work in the Philly tournament, though, so.
I mean, the main appeal to me, which I think I mentioned before, is the fact that it walls the grasses, beats most of the bugs, and doesn't lose as badly as Noctowl does against the electrics.
Yeah.
Also, that Vigoroth matchup, I believe, is like pretty close. Where if the Vigoroth, if you swap in a Fortress and they counter swap to Vigoroth, if they're too slow with their switch, I believe you're able to win that. So that Vigoroth matchup is pretty close, I believe.
Okay, so I think we can move on to the next category, unless you guys have any closing remarks about this.
Yeah.
Mainly, it's that, that weak Lantern matchup is something to look out for. So, as long as, Heracross, Fortress, Beedrill, all of those have, like, neutral to favorable matchups for, against Lantern, so, you sort of fill that role a little bit, but nowhere near as well as, Venusaur does. Or any grass type, for that matter.
Right.
To recap, for those of you listening at a later time, we just went over Noctowl, Anti-Vigoroth, Anti-Grass, Double Electric, and those were Tembio, El Happy 88, and Mystic Styles 1. Moving on to the next category, we have Noctowl, Anti-Vigoroth, Grass. We have Flex. There's no better way to define it, and then an Electric. Quite a few teams submitted this. It's kind of all over the place. Math Nerd Gord, Kaiser Niner, Koroshiaki, Mother Brain, Concept, Humstyles, Ninasty, and Ya Wordle. A lot of Heracross here, I'm seeing. A lot of Venusaur, for sure. Probably Venusaur is the most popular pick in this team comp. And definitely a fair amount of Alolan Rocks. So,
there's a decent amount of Vespiquen as well, and some Fortress. But yeah, it's pretty all over the place for sure.
Let's start with the Breloom team. Let's roast that one a bit. How about that? Because it's got Ludicolo too, so I got a bone to pick with Ludicolo.
Breloom bad, Heracross good. There you go, it's roasted.
Yeah, Breloom just seems like a worse version of Heracross, especially because it doesn't resist that counter damage like Heracross does. So when you're taking that neutral counter and those neutral body slams, the damage adds up pretty quickly, especially against a mon as frail as Breloom. So it's a somewhat unreliable Vigoroth counter. And like we've said, it kind of melts in the face of any flying moves.
The only... Yeah. Sorry, go ahead, Tristan.
Yeah, I guess the one advantage, I think is what you're going to say, is it does resist electric. So it has a better electric matchup than, say, Heracross. But for the most part, Heracross is generally better. And if you don't have a Heracross because it's legacy, or not legacy, it's regional rather, there's plenty of other good Vigoroth counters that you can look at. You can look at adding another bug, probably. So you'd be looking at like adding Vespiquen, Beedrill, or Venomoth to your lineup, probably in place of that Breloom. And then in that grass slot, I know there's been some Ludicolo hype recently, since the winner of the Dortmund Worlds used a Ludicolo. But I just feel it's a little lacking, and like some its coverage moves, just like Ice Beam and Hydro Pump, just aren't particularly useful in this meta, in my opinion. Versus if you were to run like a Victory Bell that packs that counter resistance, and like a faster firing Leaf Blade, as well as a solid coverage move in either Sludge Bomb or Acid Spray. I think that would be my preference if you want to run a Razor Leafer. That being said, I think all Razor Leafers have some viability. I just think that Victory Bell is kind of the top choice here, in my opinion. What do you guys think?
I agree.
Yep.
And I don't like Ludicolo.
The only time I see
the...
triple Razor Leaf viable is in Friday Night Fights.
Right?
But...
Yeah.
Or if you're fighting Mason.
Well, that's what I'm talking about. Then again, he did lose to a Giraffurg twice, so maybe Giraffurg needs to get out of the trash can.
Never. Over my dead body. Ludicolo, I mean, it's seeing some play in other more diverse metas, but when you get this concentrated against grass, that Razor Leaf can only get you so far, and it's not like Ice Beam is doing a huge amount here for coverage, and Hydro Pump takes a ton of time to charge up.
We just thought we'd
especially
let
if
you know, AJ, that our Patreon poll for the next emotes, the Ludicolo emote is leading in the poll. So just
Oh dear.
you gotta look. I mean, you already lost with the Raichu pilot hat, so
I did.
it's just not looking good.
This is just an attempt to trigger me as much as possible, and it's working, I guess. But it's for a good cause, right?
And yeah, I just feel like, if you look at like say a Razor Leaf matchup, and you're running Ludicolo and your opponent's running Victory Belt, you're in a pretty rough spot because they're double resisting your Razor Leaf while they're hitting you for neutral. And then I believe that Sludge Bomb or Acid Spray is going to come out much quicker than Ice Beam.
Mm-hmm. And this Breloom team, to add on to it, it's running Dynamic Punch and Sludge Bomb as opposed to Seed Bomb, which, I mean, I think Seed Bomb is pretty much a requirement here.
Yeah, Breloom's so glassy, you want that quick-firing charge move.
And just cycling back a bit to the Breloom thing that I was saying earlier, the one situation I can see Breloom actually pulling ahead of Heracross, even though you still lose, is against Scyther or Masquerain or even Noctowl. You die in one or two less hits, so if you have a charge move ready to go, you can actually bring in your charge move to hit their flyer back before they can fire off theirs that they farmed you with.
Mm-hmm.
But that's so situational, it's not even worth considering. It's just I've run that sim a couple times, and more specifically, like with Masquerain and Scyther, Breloom dies in 4 air slashes versus Heracross in 5.
Mm-hmm.
So Masquerain needs 5 air slash to charge up Ominous Wind, whereas Scyther I think needs 6 for X-Scissor. So that's the only reason you can potentially get off your charge move before they get off theirs, but it's not a reason to pick a Breloom. Plus, that's a losing matchup.
There was another moveset that sort of screamed at me was Concept. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Is running a Masquerain with Aerial Ace and Silver Wind. Concept, if you're on, go ahead and comment what was your logic behind that. But I think the bottom line is Air Slash is doing plenty of work, and Ominous Wind, Silver Wind is offering better coverage, plus they both have the opportunity to boost. So that was our analysis in favoring that particular moveset. I don't think Aerial Ace does a whole lot of favors for you other than maybe a little bit better matchup against the bugs, but what do you guys think?
Well, also Aerial Ace is the slowest out of the 3 to charge, and Ominous Wind, again, relatively quick. So you're picking, it's Air Slash and Silver Wind. The first time Masquerain swaps in, it takes 5. Every subsequent charge move, Ominous Wind is 5, and Silver Wind is 6.
I'm sorry, it's Air Cutter, not not Aerial Ace. Masquerain doesn't have.
Okay, yeah, you're right.
Ace, yeah.
Right. Yeah, I think if you want to run,
you wrote the Aerial Ace in the sheet.
If you want to run a bug flyer with double flying moves, you should be looking at Scyther. Because Scyther's Aerial Ace is much better than Masquerain's Air Cutter.
Yeah.
Air Cutter's just a generally bad move.
For perspective, Air Cutter has like 1.3 damage per energy, 55 energy, And Silver Wind, which often feels like it takes quite a while to charge, is 45 energy, 1.86 damage per energy. And then Ominous Wind is 40 energy and 1.25 damage per energy. So not a great move by any means, but it offers slightly better coverage, I think, here. Except for like the normal types. What are some other things that sort of scream at you when you guys look at this particular team comp? I think it's very flexible, right? A lot of these teams are going to have at least 3 week to Noctowl, which is kind of to be expected. Perhaps the exception to this is the Cradley team, which sort of hedges that loss against Noctowl with the opportunity for Stone Edge, and maybe even to some extent the Fortress teams.
But that team is also a little weaker to Vigoroth because he's running Magneton over the other
For sure. Yeah. You still have Venomoth and Victory Bell to deal with it, but I agree with the Vigoroth. You're restricted in your picks against Vigoroth. I'm a big fan of running like 3 Vigoroth counters. I think that's the right play at the moment, as long as you don't open up too many holes in the rest of your lineup. You just want to have options.
There is an important comment in Twitch chat, YouTube chat though. The
What's
choice
that?
for Ludicolo is that it has a fabulous shiny, so extra damage.
Oh, right. Yes. But
I mean,
you know
you
what?
could also run extra damage fabulous shinies of Alolan Graveler, Venusaur,
Fortress.
Vigoroth, Fortress.
You can also
Alolan
run a
Raichu.
Cradily also.
Venusaur.
Yeah, there's a lot of options to run those extra damage shinies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Pikachu-82 is talking about Sceptile. I gotta say, we have an interesting stream coming soon where we're gonna...
Tomorrow.
Yeah, so we're gonna be talking about the Philly tournament, and I suspect one of the big regrets is gonna be Sceptile, and it's gonna be one of the reasons why House Stark didn't come in as strong as he probably could have.
Yeah,
I think
so
Sceptile
just,
underperforms.
Yeah, I agree. It's pretty frail, and it doesn't have that counter resistance. So where you want your grass type to be a Vigoroth counter, Sceptile is a little bit iffy in that department.
Mm-hmm. One distinction in this team comp is running Venomoth or Heracross as your, suppose, your Vigoroth counter. I think the bottom line here is that Venomoth and Heracross are both able to take it down mostly with their fast attacks and then have a charge move ready to go. But Heracross will probably only have one, whereas Venomoth has the opportunity to maybe spam a couple Poison Fangs, or even Bait if it has enough HP after the match. But they're both very frail.
Also, I think against a fresh Vigoroth, you can get to just under 2 Silver Winds with your Venomoth.
Oh, really?
I mean,
at the end of it?
I think you're 1 off, maybe 2 off, depending on Switch. But it's, if I remember correctly, it's 7 Confusions to kill a Vigoroth. And you need 9, I believe, for 2 Silverwind.
Mm-hmm.
So how many shields do you have to burn from that? Or can you no shield it?
If you no shield, then your energy goes to waste. I think you have to do at least 1 shield there, maybe 2.
Okay.
I'm not too sure about that.
I mean, yeah, there's pros and cons to both that Venomoth and Heracross, because the Venomoth is able to kind of spread the damage out a little more, which means you're able to probably land some more damage because, like, Poison Fang is pretty spammy, for example. So if you get multiple, they probably won't shield all of them. But then Heracross has its damage concentrated because its charge moves are slower but hit harder. So, that's more likely to draw a shield, though. Whereas Venomoth is able to get in, like, a little bit of damage, but it might not be as much. And then, obviously, you just have to consider the other coverages that they each bring you. Like, Venomoth brings you, like, that Beedrill coverage, and it gives you, like, a so-so matchup with Vespiquen, where Vespiquen usually has to bait and land a Power Gem to beat you. Otherwise, you can spam Poison Fang. And then, like, Heracross is going to have slightly better electric matchups, I believe. And
Heracross is a slightly better grass matchup, shields down, I believe, as well.
Yeah, that Mega Horn hits like a truck. There were almost identical teams. Kaiser Niner and Kuroshiaki posted. So they had Vigoroth, Noctowl, Venusaur, Fortress, Golem. And the only difference was one's Kaiser Niner's running Heracross, Kuroshiaki's running Venomoth. So I guess the major difference here is the Fortress matchup. And I suppose there's some others, but that would be like the big one because Fortress is quite popular, being ranked number 1 on PvPoke for the general rankings. You're still going to see it quite a bit.
Yeah, good point. And then Math Nerd Gord had a pretty similar team too, where he has Heracross, and then he's just running Vespiquen instead of Fortress.
Which is just an extra Vigoroth counter instead of Vigoroth energy farmer. Yeah.
Yeah. So Vespiquen's giving a little bit of a better Vigoroth matchup, and I guess a little bit of a worse electric matchup, though.
Not much worse, though, because Bug Bite and X's are still quicker than Bug Bite and a Rock Tomb. I mean, Fortress can still tank a bit more, and it isn't weak to electric. So
yeah, but Fortress has Earthquake.
Right. I was saying,
so
like, if
Fortress is either going to be forcing shields. You can shield bait with that heavy slam because no one wants to risk getting a one shot with an Earthquake.
Well, risk reward, I guess.
Yeah.
That's still a solid team, though.
This team comp, the structure of the anti-Vig and grass and flex with only one electric sort of reminds me of freestyle because no matter where you go, you sort of start to see holes somewhere, and that there's going to be one team that's going to be weak to, at least something within the meta, as opposed to the double electric seems to me like a little bit more balanced. Would you guys agree, disagree? What do you think?
Mostly. I think this team comp ends up being a little bit weaker to Noctowl. Because most of the Noctowl counters come from that electric category. But at the same time, I guess it's opting for a little more flexibility because it's probably players that have decided that they wouldn't really want to run double electric in a trio. And if they know they're not going to be running double electric in a team of 3 at all, then they might be better off not running double electric and being able to pick up an additional Mon for some more flexibility.
I want to give a shout out to our weekly top cheerers. We have a lot of activity on Twitch. Dat Mug just took first place. He's at 900 bits. Thank you so much for for that. I'm actually not 100% sure what bits do. I'm more of a Twitch novice myself, but
Bits are
maybe you guys
basically
can
like
explain.
the currency. I believe it's 1 bit is a penny or something, or the conversion somewhere around there.
Nice. So it's kind of like 9. All right, nice. Then we have Tatake coming in second with 500 bits. So, you know, it's kind of like a fun little thing to do. And once again, if you've gone through the Twitch Prime subscription, you can spam those emotes, which has been plentiful this time around.
But
I was sitting here thinking
don't
that
forget
Dat
that
Monkey. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Brandon.
No, I was just gonna say that those bits are on top of their Twitch Prime donations,
Right.
like not including them.
You were
I was
thinking
sitting here
that monkey
thinking-
was what?
I thought it was Dat Boy Muck, but it's actually Tasarna.
Oh, Tasarna. He had a funny comment that I sort of glazed over on Discord.
He said
that
he's
the
signing
only...
autographs in his Raichu dungeon on Twitch.
Yeah. He said, no, but he said while we were talking about Breloom, he said that the only benefit I see in Breloom is that it can't be farmed.
Which is kind of echoing what I said. Not necessarily that it's good, but it's good in that sense.
It just gets obliterated.
If you can't be farmed, that means you're a free hit, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then one other thing I wanted to touch on was it looks like AJ in this category, you input one team wrong because there's one team that doesn't actually have a grass. So I thought we could go over that one.
Oh,
which
yikes.
is none is D. And they have Noctowl, Heracross, Venomoth, Vespiquen, and Raichu.
Got
so
it.
they have that. There's triple bugs that all triple bugs that all function as Vigoroth counters.
Mm-hmm.
But no grass. And then they have the Raichu and the Noctowl.
Definitely
so
weak
I think,
to the Alolan Rocks.
Yeah.
I guess Heracross has a somewhat decent matchup, but it definitely doesn't want to be taking any hits from them.
Right.
Any charge moves.
And then I think Raichu goes even or loses usually. And then having those two other bugs that are weak, as well as the Noctowl. So I
You're
think
going
that
to trigger Tasarna if you say that Alolan Rocks tend to beat Raichu. I can hear him furiously typing.
Is it really triggering if it's true, though?
Oh, yeah, well.
I mean, Tasarna thinks that Raichu beats everything, so...
Yes.
Yeah, but didn't he not use a Raichu in Rainbow?
That's true. I have
Just
proof.
putting that out there on the record.
Yeah.
Raichu good. Don't use Raichu.
Okay.
So yeah,
I'm gonna...
One more team?
Yeah, I think with no grass and those bugs, it does make it a little weak to the Alolan Rock Boys, like you said. But for that team comp, I do think that having that Heracross does help with that matchup some.
So, for those of you watching this later, we just went through Noctowl, Anti-Vigoroth, Grass, Flex, and Electric, with the exception of Nunes D. Sorry, that's my bad. But we ran through Math Nerd, Gord, Kaiser Niner, Koroshiaki, Mother Brain, Concept, Humstyles, and Yawwordle. And those are mainly the teams that we went through.
Yeah, and then we just covered Nunes D's team after that.
Yeah.
And so we have one team left now.
Very, very strange team. Before we go into hopefully some rapid fire teams that were submitted later today, this evening. Jalapeno Good? Jalapeno Good? Is that how do you pronounce this guy's name?
Jalapeno Gouda.
I missed the A. Yeah, so Jalapeno Gouda is running Noctowl, Fortress, Victory Bell, Torterra, Shiftry.
I think he was inspired by Brandon. I think he was inspired by Brandon's triple Razor Leaf that beat me.
I'll take it.
Okay.
If it inspires a team, then that means it's good. Especially if it beat Mason.
So if
I
you were
think
up against this team, what would you be really happy that you had?
either Noctowl and or Fortress.
Yeah, for sure.
Honestly, even Venomoth does work against this team.
You know what's
Except
funny
for the
is
Fortress. Except for the Fortress and the Noctowl.
what's kind of funny is that he chose 3 grass types and he didn't choose Venusaur. You know, like if you're gonna commit that much to grass, you might as well pick the best grass type there is.
No, but if he's going to commit to grass, he's got to drop Fortress for the grass type.
Yeah. We just kind of have to roast this team. It's I think it's close to irredeemable, if not, you might get a fluke win here and there, but for the most part, any serious contestant is going to be playing around this.
If you had to pick one of the 3 Razor Leafers, which would you pick?
Victory Bell.
I'd personally vote Victory Bell.
Easily Victory Bell.
Yeah, hands down.
I mean, the only redeeming quality I see at Torterra is Earthquake. And Shiftry has the almost fully unresisted foul play, but that's about it.
Yeah, but Shiftry's also weak to fighting.
And
so
Bug.
It's not even that. It's
and
not
flying.
even that good. Yeah, it's
Actually,
not
it's
even that.
double weak to Bug.
Yeah, well, but it's also weak to fighting, so it's not even that good of a Vigoroth counter, which is what you want your grass type for.
We're getting some shots fired your way, Beagold. Because you were spewing that 6 waters propaganda in Rainbow. So this is coming back to bite us. And this is all your fault.
No, this is actually Mason's fault. He lost a triple Razor Leaf.
What Razor Leafs were they?
It was Victory Bell, Shiftry, Ludicolo.
Yeah.
Oh, Ludicolo.
Ludicolo for the kill.
Yeah.
Sorry. And the most important detail, it was against a Noctowl lead.
Yeah, right. So we do have a poll going up. What's your favorite grass user in this cup? Venusaur, Meganium, Victory Bell, and Sceptile are the available options. I'd go with Venusaur, hands down, out of all of those. I wouldn't even run.
The fact that Venusaur beats the other grasses, and it has that Sludge Bomb as a solid coverage move against flyers, makes it pretty appealing to me.
Yeah.
I think Victory Bell would be my second choice, but it's just a lot slower with that Razor Leaf. So in bad matchups, Venusaur can at least fire off some charged moves, but Victory Bell's so slow that it kind of struggles more in bad matchups.
Yeah. Well, while this poll is going, and since we're pretty much done roasting Jalapeno Gouda here, I think we might have some time to maybe do some rapid fire roasts of the late submissions. You guys up for that?
Sure.
Yeah, how many teams do we have?
We have a few, and we'll just... Let's see, we're an hour and a half in. Quartz,
There's 11
what's our
teams.
time frame? How much time do we have, Quartz? Okay, so let's just do a hard cutoff at 15 prior to the hour. Okay? At 45. Alright. So Yodavic, and these are rapid fire, so we're not gonna go in depth here. Yodavic is going for Vigoroth, Noctowl, and then he's got Heracross, Vespiquen, and the double electric, which we talked about a little bit. Once again, you're gonna be looking out for, what was it we said? I suppose Noctowl to some extent, but he's got that well covered with the 2 electrics and Vigoroth.
Lantern is one of the big ones.
Lantern. Yeah, Lantern was it.
And he mentioned honorable subbins, Lantern, Frenzy, Venusaur, Alolan Golem, and Fortress.
I think
So
you meant to say
personally,
Graveler there, but
Personally, I'd
Golem's
like
already
to
in.
see Lantern in place of that Raichu.
Mhm.
And you could go with Venu over Vespiquen, but those seem kind of interchangeable as Vigoroth counters.
I was gonna
And-
say Venu in for Heracross personally.
I mean, I'm still personally on Team Double Counter.
Team double
But-
counter.
Yeah, double
That's
counter,
kinda
double
fading
electric.
away. That's kind of fading away in the background, especially because Heracross has not an amazing. I mean, it still wins, but not an amazing matchup against those Alolan rocks. So I don't know. It's not the best against the electrics in general either. Mad Max YOLO Swag is running Vigoroth Noctowl. He has Vespiquen as his anti-Vigoroth. Venusaur is his grass type, and then double electric. Another Alolan Raichu submission. I kind of like this team.
Yeah, this
I
is
don't
one of the
think any obvious
teams I'm
flaws.
thinking of running actually.
Beedrill has problems. Gives problems to this team.
Yeah, although you still have Alolan Rock and Noctowl, so you know.
And
It's
then
not awful.
Raichu to some extent, but
Well, Raichu can't take X scissors. Not Alolan Raichu anyway.
no. He's
So.
saying he can sub in Lantern for Alolan Raichu.
Yeah, maybe.
I mean,
the thing that
you
Raichu
could.
had.
But
Yeah.
Lantern loses to Beedrill anyways, so I'd rather run that Alolan Raichu that has that counter resistance. Better Vigoroth matchup.
And a power gem from Vespiquen is not something that a Beedrill can take. In full XX. A lot of X's. He's running Vigoroth, no Noctowl. He's got Fortress. His anti-Vigoroth is Beedrill. He's got Venusaur and double electric with Alolan Golem and Lantern. This is fairly balanced.
I mean, it's still pretty weak to Noctowl.
Yeah. Well,
I don't think so. It's got double
Not
electric
awful.
and Vigoroth. That's better than a lot of teams. Because a lot of teams are packing. A lot of teams have one electric Vigoroth and a Noctowl mirror. So this is better than what a lot of teams are running.
All right. We'll move on to Lieutenant Crunch 01. He has Lantern with Charge Beam here and Noctowl with Nightshade. He's running Vigoroth, Noctowl, Heracross is his anti-Vigoroth, and then he has Venusaur, Fortress, and Lantern.
I think a lot of the reason you run Lantern is for the Alolan Rock and Magneton and Magnezone matchups. And you need Water Gun to win those matchups.
Yes.
So I've understood the merit of Charge Beam Lantern in past comps like Tempest and Rainbow, but in my opinion, Charge Beam Lantern in this meta is just strictly worse. Like, it gives you the mirror match, but then you're losing those other electric matchups.
Yeah. But take this with a grain of salt because we've always roasted Charge Beam Lantern. Like always, it's just our thing at this point.
I mean, yes, but like I'm just saying, in the other cups I've roasted it, but I've understood the viability of it.
Yeah.
But I just don't really see any viability here. Like if in another cup you were arguing to me the merits of why you're running Charge Beam Lantern, I would have understood it and been like, okay, go for it.
Yeah.
But I just don't see it here, especially with how common those Alolan Rock Boys are. Basically dropping that matchup. at that point, I just would rather run a different electric.
Yeah. The grass poll results are in. Venusaur is the clear winner, taking overwhelming majority here. Oh, a few votes came in, and he just has the half of the votes are going for Venusaur at this point. I'll throw another
second
question.
place?
Last question. What's second place is tied Meganium and Victreebel, which is kind of oh no, it's a three-way tie. Sceptile, Meganium, Victreebel, and Sceptile, three-way tie.
Wow.
So I disagree with that. I'd say Victreebel gets the second place, and then like the other two are kind of far third and fourth. I'll throw one last poll for the night. Charge Beam versus Water Gun Lantern, and see what you guys think. See if you guys agree with what we're saying. Balls of Spheal is running Vigoroth, Noctowl, Beedrill, Masquerain, so he's running two sort of anti-Vigoroth picks, a Venusaur, and a Alolan Golem. So, like we said earlier, this team is going to have to watch out for Noctowl.
And
so
Lantern.
You're gonna... And no, not Lantern. Because you still have
Masquerain,
Vigoroth
Noctowl, Golem.
Yeah, but, like, you still have Beedrill and you still have Venusaur.
And Vigoroth.
Yeah, and Vigoroth, too. And it's pretty comfortable to run any of those in a line of 3, so... But the Noctowl is going to perhaps... Well, you still have the Mirror, and you still have Alolan Golem, and you still have Vigoroth, but those 3 other picks, you're going to be expecting to run them, so Noctowl is going to have at least one favorable matchup, for sure. Maybe more.
But then that's kind of the same thing that can be said for Lantern.
Right.
You're expecting...
I guess the difference is that you always have to bring a counter to Vigoroth, and... so at one of those 3 is going to come in for sure, versus maybe Lantern is, not 100% you have to counter it with one of the other 3. You know what I'm saying?
Right, yeah. And he's also saying that he wanted to go with this team because they're all 10,000 dust for a second move, aside from Vigoroth.
That's true.
And that's another thing to consider. We're currently on our 7th month of Sylph Cup, so we have the August Cup, and that's the end of Season 1. So, some people, myself included, are a little bit dust poor and want to conserve dust whenever possible.
Brandon, you are not allowed to say that. No.
Beagle is not dust poor. He's like those politicians that wear jeans and pretend... But in fact, they like multi-billionaires. He's got like 3 million Stardust or something ridiculous.
At least 3.5 mil.
Yeah.
It's living comfortable within your
reason. Any chance you guys get to make Beagle power-up stuff on stream, you should take advantage of it.
Well, I was going to power up a Tackle Electro this past Friday, but we didn't have enough viewers. So...
Just got to get those viewers.
But back to the previous conversation about like the being weak to Noctowl, being weak to Lantern. I mean, it is a little weak to those, but I don't know if it's like particularly more weak than some of the other teams we've looked at. And I think that's just kind of a testament to. I think this is a pretty good meta, to be honest, where there's a lot of options, and a lot of interesting interplay between them, to the point where. It's not like some of the previous cups where there was like a core set of 8 to 10 mons that you could expect to see all the time and build your team like pretty strongly against those. There's so many options here that it's a little bit of pick your poison, and if you stack yourself against one thing, you're making yourself weaker against something. So you're not going to get perfect coverage to everything here, so you kind of just have to decide what you want to be good against and what you want to have to maybe play around a little more.
Okay. Let's see what's the next team.
Tasarna's
Oh,
team.
team.
Tasarna.
All right, let's see. So there's Raichu, which is bad.
But wait,
And
there's only
then-
one Raichu, so that's good. You should be running
Yeah.
double Raichu.
What's the deal, man? You promised that you were gonna run double Raichus.
I
So
think
until
we
I see a double
decided
Raichu
that.
team.
Yeah, I think we decided that if he didn't run double Raichu, he didn't actually love Raichu, and he was just
Yeah.
pretending this whole time.
Yeah, I mean, Rainbow already proved him when he chose Magneton over Raichu, and now he's only running Raichu when he's got the chance to run two. Frankly, this is 2 months in a row where it's very disappointing, you guys.
All right, so we've got Venomoth, Heracross, Vigoroth, Beedrill, Kanto Raichu, and Alolan.
Hmm.
So what do you guys think? This is a no Noctowl team.
No
Yeah, so
Noctowl
what
team
was our-
and no Flyer. So that's an interesting team.
What was our conclusion earlier? That you had to run a Alolan Rock pretty much if you were gonna run a Noctowl-less team.
Yeah, and I mean, like I said, I think I prefer Fortress and a Noctowl-less team as well. But I think this team might be decent.
Is it
Because
perhaps
you've
that
got-
Beedrill and Venomoth have way too much overlap to be running them in the same six?
Somewhat, but Beedrill gives you. I mean, they both. I think the point is without Noctowl, he's trying to compensate on that grass matchup,
Yeah.
and then Beedrill gives you the better Vespiquen matchup, whereas Venomoth gives you the better like Beedrill and Venomoth matchups.
Yeah.
The biggest concern I see with this team is an Executor.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, someone mentioned that.
Because
Confusion week.
Executor, I think the only thing that Executor doesn't straight out beat is the Alolan Golem, and even then that matchup's pretty close. Because Executor is gonna wall the Raichu, and that confusion is gonna just wreck the Beedrill, the Venomoth, and the Heracross. And the Executor tends to beat the Vigoroth also. So
Yeah,
But
I
at
think
the same time, Executor's rare enough that it's not something most teams need to generally worry about.
well, you don't need to
Yeah, but
worry
you don't
about
want
it,
to have
but
6 week to it.
That's also true.
yeah, I think you could. Yeah, like it's one of those things you don't need to worry about, but you still want to have like 1 to 2 answers for it. So I think the easiest solution would be to drop one of those bugs, either Venomoth or Beedrill, in favor of a Vespiquen. I
Yeah.
think if you make that swap, that's like the easiest to help shore up that Executor match without like drastically altering the rest of the team.
Choose the Master saying time to bust out Giraffaric against this team.
I'll
Yeah.
do it.
Are you Ultra with Tasarna?
I don't have Tasarna.
He's too popular. Lantern with Water Gun won the poll resoundingly. I think only one person voted for Charge Beam. Might have been out of spite to us.
No, he said he wanted to be in the visible minority.
Oh, right. Sevetian Ale, he said he deleted his old post. Vigoroth, Noctowl, Vespiquen for his anti-Vigoroth, and then he's got Venusaur, Double Electric with Lantern, Golem. I mean, we've covered this pretty extensively. He's considering one of the 2 Raichus, and he says he needs help. So, what
He's
would you guys
considering
say?
Golem or one of the 2 Raichus.
Yeah, I would say it's
So-
Golem for sure, and then Lantern or one of the 2 Raichus. Personally.
Yeah. I would say I would say Golem or Golem plus Lantern or Alolan Raichu.
Mhm.
I'm not as sold as on that Kanto Raichu. But yeah, it seems like Golem is a pretty good pick for a double electric team.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think the rest of this is all the same as a team that we talked about before that we seem to like. So, solid picks. Then we have How do you even say this?
Humorizade. Just say it fast enough that you'd get away with some silent eyes or something.
So they have Vigoroth, Beedrill, Noctowl, Scyther, Magneton, and Venusaur.
Well, really relying on that Magneton to take out Noctowl or Vigoroth, I suppose.
And the mirror, though.
Yeah.
So it's not too bad. But, I mean, that's kind of what it comes down to. If you're not running a double electric team, then that's kind of what your Noctowl coverage ends up being.
Yeah. Yeah, this is a problem. Is Magneton is it's a really nice when you're at a shield advantage, but it's kind of like a win more situation. Like you were already in a winning situation. It just puts you further. Sometimes.
Yeah, I don't think this team comp really needs Magneton either, because one of the biggest draws of Magneton is resist grass moves and double resist. But they're running both Noctowl and Scyther, which are going to beat like all the bugs and all the grass types. And then they also have Beedrill, which beats like all the grass types. So I don't think you really need Magneton. I think you could easily go with like an Alolan Rock Boy or even a Lantern, because you don't really have to worry about those grass matchups very much, given the rest of the team.
If not for Venusaur, and to some extent Beedrill, I'd say this is a very weak to Lantern, but yeah, you're right. Nerficus has no Vigoroth. Wow. So this is the first no Vigoroth team.
That's the first Ninjask also.
Yeah. So how can we pick this apart real quick? I wish this had been an earlier submission, because we would have been able to focus on holes of no Vigoroth teams, but...
Noctowl beats 4, has the mirror, and only loses to Lantern.
Yeah. Would you bring Vigoroth against this team?
Probably not.
It still beats Lantern and Noctowl.
Yeah, but that's
and at a shield advantage, it beats everything except.
I suppose.
I
guess the shield advantage case.
Yeah.
Also, it's pretty weak to the Rock Boys.
Fairly.
Yeah.
It's not awful to the Rock Boys though, because you got Lantern, Venusaur, and then to some extent Heracross.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean the Venusaur matchup isn't that clean either.
Yeah.
Like Golem and Graveler can actually beat Venusaur. Barely, but they can still beat it. But no, this team is very weak to Noctowl.
Yeah. If I had to make a swap, I'd probably swap Ninjask for Vigoroth.
Yeah. Because I think if you make that one swap, it's pretty meta at that point.
Yeah.
And it's probably the same or very similar to some of the teams we've reviewed before.
Right. Well, we are at 45. That is the last team review of the night. We might do one next week. I don't know what the schedule is yet, but for those of you who didn't make the cutoff or whatever, don't you worry. There's always a lot of help going on in the help channels within our Discord. Someone could post a link again just for those of you listening on Twitch. But go on Jungle Cup help within our Discord or Jungle Cup discussion, and there's always plenty of people willing to help you out with
if you want
team compositions.
But if you want specific team advice, use the help channel, because
sure.
the discussion channel is more for kind of like bigger concepts and discussing sims and general ideas, whereas the help is for like one person's specific team kind of thing. But yeah, we will most likely be doing a team review stream next week, but that's not set in stone yet. For the rest of this week, we have tomorrow night at 8 p.m. Eastern. We'll be doing a recap of the Philly tournament. And so we'll be bringing Economical, who is on the Go Stadium server and won that tournament. I think it was, 6-0?
Yeah, 6-0. And we reviewed his team earlier tonight.
Right. So bring him on to talk about it, and then we'll also be Master as well as House Stark to talk about their experiences and try to look at mistakes. They're both top level players, and the tournament didn't go quite as well as they would have liked. And so that's a great learning experience for all of us to kind of get some insight from them on, where they thought it went wrong, whether it was just mistakes or maybe problems with their team composition. So we'll be talking about some of that tomorrow night, and then we'll be doing Friday night fights on Friday.
Awesome. Will either Quartz or John take it away?
I'm here.
Thank our Patreons.
Yep. So the Patreon page is our end credits as usual. So thanking all the people who support us there, and thanks for everyone who submitted your teams, especially those who turned in at the last minute. Appreciate the hosts, AJ, Tristan, and Beagold. Nice job covering the thing, and we'll be seeing you guys tomorrow for more discussion on Jungle Cup. For tonight, we're just going to end the stream by rating, I think, Jesus Moon 99. They're out shiny hunting. So if anyone here who are subscribers, we're going to go there and raid them. And once we enter the raid, spam those emotes on their channel. I don't think we have the shiny flex for tier 1. Someday we'll have it down at tier 1, and then we can go, shiny flex on someone, shiny hunting. Other than that, I think this is it. Video will be up on YouTube as usual, so you guys can see the replay. If you've missed, your team being reviewed and so on. And yeah, I think that's it. Thanks for joining, guys, and see you next time.
Again with the see you next time. Man, some people are gonna get